Queen Lyra sat upon her crumbling throne, a dust motes dancing in the faint light filtering through a cracked ceiling. Another tremor rattled the Dranic city palace, a familiar groan from a dying world. Royal advisors murmured, merchants shifted nervously, and guards braced themselves, but Lyra only offered a weary sigh. Her gaze drifted to the vacant space beside her. "Perhaps," she muttered, her voice tinged with bitter resignation. It was a mercy that Orion was returned to Earth. The words hung in the air, heavier than the dust. A ripple of discomfort spread through the assembly. Merchants averted their eyes, and even the stern-faced guards looked away. Elder Corvan, Lyra's aging advisor, stepped forward, his pale face etched with caution. "Your Majesty," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the lingering aftershocks, "we have Lady Seraphina's representatives present. Perhaps family matters should be reserved for more private chambers." Lyra felt a flicker of irritation. Her sister's spies were everywhere, always ready to twist her words, especially when they concerned the boy she loved like her own. Lyra's lip curled into a defiant smile. She pushed herself up from the throne, the movement drawing all eyes. "Family matters?" she scoffed, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Let them hear. Orion will not inherit this dying rock, Corvan. He is free." Her eyes, sharp and challenging, locked onto the two stiff figures in the corner, Lady Seraphina's proxies. "Your precious, pure bloodline can have this husk of a planet, for all I care." A collective gasp rose from the courtiers, their shock a fleeting victory for Lyra. The memory of the legal battles, the humiliation of fighting Earth's custody courts, still burned. 15 years ago, they had called her mad for adopting a human child from a crashed scout ship, a starborn orphan. She remembered Orion's terrified, wide eyes, clinging to her robes. Even then, she had sensed an unusual, quiet intelligence in him, a spark that refused to be extinguished. Lyra had endured their whispers, their judgment, all to protect that spark. A queen's pride, yes, but a mother's fierce, unyielding love above all. Lyra took a step down from the dais, her voice rising from a bitter whisper to a raw, impassioned roar. "You judge me for this," she demanded, gesturing wildly at the crumbling architecture, the dust, the fading light. "You speak of succession, of bloodlines, when our planet is a cadaver? Look around you. Our birth rates plummet, our cities choke on their own ruins, and the ground itself rejects us." Her gaze swept over the horrified faces. "There is no throne here worth inheriting, no future for your pure bloodline to claim. Only dust and silence." Queen Lyra looked out at the assembled courtiers, their faces a mix of discomfort and feigned indifference. She took a deep, shuddering breath, the acrid air of Leavaria burning her lungs. "You may judge my choices," she said, her voice dropping to a raw, honest whisper that nonetheless carried across the cavernous room. "But I am eternally grateful that my son, Orion, belongs to a species powerful enough to survive. He will live, even if we do not." Her gaze swept over them, a challenge in her weary eyes. "I love him as my own blood, more than any decree or tradition. Now, begone, all of you." A murmur rippled through the room as the courtiers, relieved to be dismissed from the queen's raw display of emotion, began to file out, their whispers like rustling leaves. The throne room emptied in a chaotic stampede of rustling silks and clanking armor, leaving only the queen, Elder Corvan, and her loyal maid, Hera. The sudden silence after the throng's departure was deafening, a heavy blanket of quiet. Lyra felt a strange relief, a cleansing of the air. She didn't want their pity, their judgment. Turning her back on the ornate, yet crumbling, throne, she walked towards the massive, dust-streaked window that overlooked Dranic City, seeking a fleeting moment of solace in the dying light. Through the grime-caked glass, Dranic City was a ruin, a sprawling monument to decay. Another smoke pillar, black and thick, coiled lazily into the bruised sky from a distant district. Hera, ever vigilant, approached with a breathing mask, its filters designed to lessen the planet's toxic kiss. Lyra waved it away. "No, Hera," she murmured, her voice raspy. "Let me feel it. Let me feel the honest burn of our dying world. There's no point in pretending anymore." She pressed her forehead against the cool pain. The tremors of the planet a familiar, unwelcome pulse beneath her feet. Suddenly, the heavy doors to the throne room burst open. Captain Dex, head of the Royal Guard, stumbled in, breathless, his armor askew, his face pale with alarm. He bent over, hands on his knees, gasping for air. "Your Majesty," he choked out, straightening with a visible effort. "Unannounced human ships. Dozens of them. They've entered our atmosphere, ignoring all hailing frequencies, all warnings." Lyra's heart seized in her chest. Human ships? Here? Now? A cold dread seeped into her bones. Lyra pushed herself away from the window, her weariness replaced by a sudden, sharp fear. "An attack?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the captain's ragged breaths. Captain Dex shook his head, still panting. "No, Your Majesty, not an attack." Their lead vessel transmitted a message, a single, repeating phrase. He paused, catching his breath, and then delivered words that shattered Lyra's world, sending a jolt of disbelief and dawning hope through her. "Orion is returning home." Lyra swayed, her hand flying to her mouth, the words echoing in her mind. "Orion, here?" Elder Corvin, ever the pragmatist, was already barking orders at the captain. "Vessel counts, Captain. Identify their intent. Deploy defensive screens, but hold fire." But Lyra barely heard him. Orion, coming home. To this dying world. The news of Orion's return ripped through Lyra's carefully constructed shell of resignation like a starship through atmosphere. All royal decorum shattered. Her robes, once a symbol of her weary burden, now became a flowing banner as she bolted through the palace corridors. Elder Corvin, his aged legs struggling to keep pace, shouted her name, but Lyra barely registered it. She sped past tapestries depicting ancient victories, past the Hall of Whispers where she'd first held a terrified Orion, past the council chambers where she'd fought for his adoption. Each familiar corner brought a fresh wave of memory, fueling her frantic pace. Her heart, a cold, heavy stone just moments ago, now pounded with a desperate, exhilarating hope. She had to see him, she had to know. Lyra burst onto the observation platform overlooking Dranic City's spaceport, her breath catching not from the run, but from the sight before her. Below, the sprawling, cracked landing pads, usually desolate, were now a tableau of alien wonder. Sleek, silver ships, unlike anything Leavaria had ever crafted, descended with impossible grace, their hulls gleaming under the dying sun. Each bore the unmistakable insignia of Earth, a blue sphere cradled by a stylized green leaf. More ships appeared, emerging from the hazy sky, a silent, powerful armada. The few onlookers, mostly weary spaceport staff and a handful of guards, gaped in stunned silence. Awe, disbelief, and a tremor of unasked questions rippled through Lyra. This wasn't a single scout ship. This was an entire fleet. A hush fell over the spaceport as the lead vessel, the largest and most pristine of the fleet, settled onto the central pad. Its main hatch hissed open, lowering a ramp that extended like a beckoning arm. Then he emerged. Lyra's breath hitched. He was taller, broader, his posture radiating a quiet confidence she'd never seen in the boy who had left. His human features, once a source of her people's suspicion, now seemed to possess a striking nobility. A faint, jagged scar traced a line above his left eyebrow, a testament to experiences she knew nothing about. But it was his eyes, deeper, older, with a weariness that belied his youthful strength, that truly caught her. This was her Orion, yet profoundly changed. A pang of pride mixed with a faint, sorrowful ache for the years lost. No longer a queen, Lyra was simply a mother. She surged forward, pushing past Corvin and the stunned onlookers, her regal robes forgotten. She didn't slow, didn't hesitate, until she was directly in front of him. Orion, seeing her, offered a small, knowing smile. Then, Lyra was upon him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Startled by how much he'd grown, how solid he felt, she buried her face in his shoulder, inhaling the scent of him, a mix of sterile ship air and something uniquely him. His arms came around her, strong and comforting. Above her, a voice, deeper than she remembered, yet undeniably his, rumbled softly. "I'm back, Mother." The words were a balm to her soul, a promise she hadn't dared to hope for. Lyra pulled back. her hands gripping Orion's shoulders, her eyes scanning his face, searching for any sign of the boy she'd sent away. He wore human clothes, but the fabric was subtly woven with the deep purples and grays of Leavarian royalty. His hair was shorter, his jaw firmer. He was a man, unequivocally. But why? Why had he returned to this dying rock when she had fought so hard to give him a future, a life, away from its inevitable demise? Her voice, though trembling, held its queenly authority. "Orion," she demanded, "what are you doing here? Why would you come back? You were free. You were safe." The words were laced with a protectiveness that bordered on anger, a fear that he had undone her greatest sacrifice. Orion's smile softened, a gentle reassurance in the face of her fierce concern. He took her hands, his calloused palms, a stark contrast to her own smooth, regal ones. "Mother," he began, his voice calm, resonating with a new, quiet power. "I told you I was going to university. That wasn't entirely a lie. I learned a great deal, just not always in classrooms." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the dilapidated spaceport, then back to her. "I used the time to find a way to save us all." Lyra stared, her mind struggling to comprehend. "Save them? This planet was dying." He continued. "I reconnected with my birth family. I built alliances. I worked. I found a new home for Leavaria." His words hung in the polluted air, a shocking, impossible declaration. As Lyra grappled with the enormity of his statement, Orion gestured towards the still-open hatch of his ship. A man descended, older than Orion, with kind, earnest eyes. He was clearly human, but his presence was unexpected. "Queen Lyra," the man said, offering a respectful, if slightly awkward, bow. "My name is Marcus. I'm Orion's uncle, his father's brother." He straightened, a faint shadow of past resentment in his gaze, quickly replaced by something akin to respect. "I admit I wasn't pleased when Orion told us about you, about how he was taken. But he spoke of your love, of your sacrifice, and he convinced us. He convinced me that you are his true mother. He came back to save his mother's people, and Earth is here to help." Marcus extended a hand, not to Lyra, but to the vast, open ramp of Orion's ship. "We understand this is a lot to take in, Your Majesty." He offered a small, knowing smile. "But Orion has worked tirelessly for years. He hasn't just found a way. He's built an entirely new future. It's not something we can explain with words alone. You need to see it. So if you're willing, Queen Lyra, we'd like to invite you on a little space journey. A journey to show you exactly what Orion means when he says he's found a way to save everyone." The invitation hung in the air, a gateway to the impossible, beckoning Lyra towards an unknown, exhilarating future. A day later, Lyra stood in the sterile cargo bay of a human transport ship, a strange mix of apprehension and giddy anticipation churning within her. Corvin stood beside her, his face a mask of disapproval, muttering about human theatrics. Orion, however, was beaming. "For the full effect, Mother," he explained, holding up a soft, dark cloth, "I need to blindfold you." Lyra, whose instincts screamed against such vulnerability, hesitated for only a moment, but then she met Orion's eager eyes, brimming with a boyish excitement she hadn't seen in years. She nodded, trusting him implicitly. As the blindfold settled over her eyes, plunging her into darkness, she heard Corvin's indignant huff and the excited, hushed whispers of the human crew. "Ready?" Orion's voice was a low hum beside her, vibrating with barely contained excitement. Lyra nodded, her hand in his, feeling the warmth and strength that had always been her anchor. He guided her down a ramp, the slight incline perceptible beneath her feet. The air around them shifted immediately, no longer the acrid, burning sting of Leavaria, but something impossibly clean. She inhaled deeply, a gasp escaping her lips. It was crisp, cool, and carried the intoxicating sense of healthy, vibrant vegetation she hadn't experienced in decades. There was the subtle, earthy aroma of fertile soil, the sweet perfume of unseen blossoms, and the unmistakable, refreshing tang of fresh, flowing water. It was the breath of a new world, promising life. Orion's calloused fingers were gentle as they untied the blindfold. Lyra blinked, her vision swimming, then snapped into focus, a gasp catching in her throat. Before her, stretching to a horizon beneath twin, pastel moons, was a landscape born of a dream. Vibrant purple grass swayed in a gentle breeze. A sparkling river snaked through a valley, its waters impossibly clear, and forests of silver-barked trees shimmered, their leaves a rich emerald green. The air, crisp and sweet, filled her lungs, a stark contrast to the acrid burn of Leavaria. Orion stood beside her, his face alight with a boyish, triumphant grin. "Welcome to New Leavaria," he started, then corrected himself, his eyes softening as he looked at her. "No, for your people, Mother, welcome to New Leavaria." Lyra felt tears sting her eyes, not from the dust and ash she was used to, but from an overwhelming, impossible hope that seized her heart. It was real. It was all real. Lyra's voice was a whisper, barely audible over the rush of the river below. How? It was the only word she could manage. The enormity of what she saw making her head spin. How could a single human boy, no matter how brilliant, have achieved this? Marcus stepped forward, a proud, almost proprietary smile on his face. He started a campaign, Queen Lyra, a viral one they called it on Earth, "Save the species that saved me." He paused, letting the words sink in. He told them about you. About your unconditional love for a human child, even when your own people questioned it. He spoke of Leavaria's beauty, its slow, agonizing death, and how your species protected him when his own ship was lost. He appealed to their best instincts, their compassion for a dying race, and their sense of global responsibility. Lyra felt a surge of pride, a warmth spreading through her chest that defied the alien chill of this new world. Her son, her clever, courageous son. As Marcus spoke, a holographic projection shimmered into existence before them, displaying a whirlwind of Earth news headlines, social media posts, and buzzing crowd footage. Billions of credits crowdfunded, celebrity endorsements, impassioned political testimony before global councils, even massive protests demanding action. It was a dizzying display of human unity and determination. You acquired an entire planet?" Lyra asked, the words feeling foreign and ridiculous on her tongue. The concept was so far beyond anything Leavarian civilization had ever conceived. Marcus nodded, the holographic images swirling around them. "Not just acquired, Your Majesty. We practically bought it outright. Earth's governments, private corporations, even individual citizens contributed. Orion's story, your story, touched something deep in humanity. They couldn't let a species die out after they'd shown such compassion to one of their own." Lyra could only stare, overwhelmed by the sheer, audacious scale of it all. Orion, his earlier humility momentarily forgotten, practically bounced with excitement. "And it's perfect, Mother!" "Look, the atmospheric composition is nearly identical, just needs minor terraforming. The flora and fauna are benign, and the water sources are abundant and pure. We've already started preparing the first settlement zones." He gestured wildly, his enthusiasm a vibrant counterpoint to the serene landscape. But Elder Corvin, who had been silent, stiff as a monument, suddenly erupted. His usually calm, wise eyes now blazed crimson with indignation. "This is madness! Playing God with a foreign world, a foreign species. You are not Leavarian, Orion. You are human. How dare you presume to lead us, to decide our future on some purchased rock? This is not our home. This is not our blood. This is not our tradition." His voice cracked with the force of his anger, echoing unnaturally in the pristine air of New Leavaria. Orion's exuberant smile faltered, then drained completely from his face as Corvin continued his tirade, his words biting and sharp. The light seemed to leave Orion's eyes, his shoulders slumping, and he looked suddenly small and vulnerable again, like the terrified boy Lyra had first found. He turned away from the majestic vista, his gaze fixed on the purple grass at his feet. "He's right," Orion mumbled, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm not Leavarian. Not by blood, not by tradition. I just wanted to help. I couldn't let you all disappear." Lyra's heart ached, a fierce maternal protectiveness rising within her. How could anyone doubt the purity of his intentions? Lyra felt a familiar fire ignite within her. She turned to Corvin, her voice low but firm, cutting through the silence. "He may not be Leavarian by blood, Elder, but he is Leavarian by heart, by deed, and by the sheer will to save us all. If he has truly offered us a future, then by the stars, we will take it. And we will accept him, bloodline or no. She strode to Orion, gently turning his face to hers, cupping his cheek with a hand that trembled slightly. I never intended for you to be a prince, my son. I sent you away to spare you the burden of a dying world, to give you a chance at life. But now I see your true purpose. You were destined for more than a crown, Orion. You were destined to save us. Lyra's gaze, now resolute, met Orion's. And if you are willing to embrace that purpose, to lead us into this new era, I can arrange for you to be the next king of New Leavaria. A small, wry smile played on her lips. Provided, of course, that you're willing to marry one of your cousins. The suggestion hung in the air, a final, traditional hurdle. Lyra expected a moment of hesitation, perhaps even protest. Instead, Orion let out a surprised, almost joyful laugh. "Oh, you mean Anya?" he said, as if discussing the weather. "Yes, we've already discussed it. She's quite keen on the idea of a new kingdom, and honestly, a fresh start away from Seraphina's constant meddling. We worked out most of the succession details years ago." Lyra, Corvan, and even Marcus stared, utterly dumbfounded. A plan within a plan, layered so deep they hadn't seen it coming. Orion just grinned, oblivious to the shock he'd caused. 5 years later, Lyra, now retired Queen Lyra, leaned against the ornate railing of the royal palace balcony on New Leavaria. Below, the sprawling, vibrant city hummed with life. Leavarian architecture, adapted to the new world's aesthetic, blended seamlessly with human-designed infrastructure. A grand festival was underway in the central plaza, a joyous riot of color and sound. Thousands of Leavarians, their skin shimmering in the twin moonlight, mingled with human colonists, their children playing together, their laughter echoing up to the balcony. Lyra watched as King Orion and Queen Anya, her niece, walked hand in hand through the crowd, greeting their people. Orion, regal and confident, still carried that spark of mischievous intelligence in his eyes. Anya, poised and graceful, smiled warmly at everyone she met. "Remarkable, isn't it?" Lyra murmured, a contented smile gracing her lips. Elder Corvan, now a trusted advisor to the new monarchy, stood beside her, his shoulders less rigid, his face softened by time and the undeniable proof of prosperity. "Impossible, I would have said," he admitted, his gravelly voice tinged with awe. The logistics of the evacuation, the integration, it should have been chaos, but he orchestrated it all with such precision. He turned to Lyra, a look of profound respect in his ancient eyes. "Your Majesty, I owe you an apology. I questioned your judgment, your love. But you saw something in him, didn't you? A cunning, a wisdom, a patience that none of us could comprehend." He paused, a thoughtful expression on his face. "He completed his degree in interspecies diplomacy with honors, you know, while he was supposedly working on Earth. And Princess Anya, she was corresponding with him since he was 15. Discreetly, of course. They exchanged letters, ideas, a shared vision for a future neither of them believed possible on our dying world." Lyra chuckled softly, a knowing glint in her eyes. "Oh, Elder, my son and my niece are far cleverer than you ever gave them credit for." The political maneuvering, the way Anya kept Seraphina distracted with pure bloodline squabbles, the timing of Orion's return, all of it was a meticulously planned dance. They orchestrated it together, a silent revolution for our survival. Corvan's eyes widened, a slow, dawning comprehension spreading across his face. "So, when Earth declared us, under their guard, it wasn't just out of compassion for the species that saved one human child, was it?" He mused, recalling the rallying cry. It was because one human child, loved by a Leavarian queen, gave them a reason to. Lyra simply smiled, a profound sense of peace settling over her. She raised a hand and waved gently towards the bustling plaza. Orion, as if sensing her, looked up, catching her eye. He offered her a warm, knowing smile, and Lyra felt a surge of triumph, of validation, and of a love that had defied planets and bloodlines to create a new legacy. The last Queen of Leavaria had become the first mother of New Leavaria, and her son, the star-born king, had delivered on a promise no one else dared to dream.